Good morning. Glad to see a few smiling faces. A couple of you have dozed off, and that's all right. Have a good rest. Psalm says the Lord gives sleep to those he loves, and if that's the case, I'm pretty sure my wife is his favorite, because she's been out for about 20 minutes now. But anyhow, it's good to be back with you guys. I was here, I believe, in the fall. So if you're thinking, I don't like that guy and I'm not sure why, it's either because you heard me before or because I also referee volleyball and basketball. So maybe you've yelled at me. I don't remember. Feel free to yell things, taunts, as they become necessary and important this morning. I'm used to it, and I won't pay any attention at all. As we begin, we will be looking at Colossians chapter 3. And this morning's message is titled, Take Out the Trash. You're welcome to turn to that in your Bible or on your app. I'm going to refer to that a little bit later on. But as we begin, let me start with this sentence. It didn't belong there. The truth is, it never did. And yet there it was, as clear as day. A full-size Coca-Cola vending machine sitting in my front yard. A thing of beauty. And I knew when my wife was going to be home. I knew when she'd get home, she would be almost as excited about it as I was. So she got home I'm not sure where she was. She did get home. And she was excited in a different way. She said, "Where did that come from?" Well, I had taken a load of metal up to the scrapyard, and I saw this beautiful Coca-Cola machine. And I had to have it. So I paid scrap price for this vending machine, and I thought, this is going to be great. We can set it on our front porch. We can ilk the local kids out of 50 cents for a can of soda or pop. What is it here? Is it pop here? Okay, I may use those interchangeably. I'm sorry if I offend you there. But again, I'm a referee. I'm used to offending half of the people at any given time, so that's all right. Anyhow, so this pop machine that I have, and she said, well, where did that come from? So I fessed up. There was some kids raising money for their friend who had leprosy, and for the children. I wanted to help him out, so I bought this soda. Well, she wasn't buying that. So we agreed we should probably get rid of it. And by we, I mean Dana told me we should probably get rid of that. Reluctantly, I said, yeah, you're probably right. I just couldn't resist myself. I saw a Coca-Cola vending machine. And so I started disassembling it because that's how I am. There's got to be some good stuff in here. And so I was cutting through pipes and stuff. There's a lot of Freon left in it, as it turns out. And so that went directly from the sheen into my lungs. So my life expectancy is rapidly waning. So I don't have lunch plans today. So we had to get rid of it because it wasn't really useful. And like you, I've had to get rid of some things in my life that perhaps are no longer useful. Maybe, honestly, never were very useful to me. Last summer, I moved from Brookville over to Clearfield. And I want to thank your pastor, Bob. Gave me a lot of assistance in moving. He helped load up a horse trailer, which tells you a little bit about my family of origin. I borrowed a horse trailer off my brother, and I had all this stuff crammed in there for about 3 months as I just slowly went through it and got rid of things. And every Monday is trash day at my house. And so every Monday I go through a box or something and do I really need this? Do I really want this? Should I ever have even had this? And so I would just get rid of it a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. In the morning the garbage can is empty and I bring it back and I fill it up again. We get rid of things that are not useful to us, don't we? We get rid of things that maybe I don't want. You've gotten rid of some things, right? Old cassette tapes, maybe. 8-tracks, worn out shoes, rotten tomatoes, grandma's bedazzled 2-piece swimsuit. No, nobody wants to see that. A couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I went through my library in my office and I got rid of several hundred books. I had a lot of books. Some I gave away, some I donated. It's only true if I tell you this. Sometimes I'd meet with your pastor in his office, and I'd bring a book with me. And when he stepped out to get a cup of coffee, I slipped that book onto his bookshelf. He found out about that the same time you did. I looked in his office today to see if it was still there, and I couldn't remember which ones I'd put there. Because he has some of the same books that I do. So you're welcome. Thanks. Yeah. I've done that to my parents too. My brother told on me though, because you know how brothers can be. So I can't do that anymore. Maybe you've found something in your life and you think, where did that come from? Why did you get that? Why did I ever introduce this into my existence, into my life? Stuff like pride, anger, shame, envy, it just starts to settle into the corners like dust, like cobwebs. It just kind of, you don't introduce it on purpose the way I did with that pop machine, sorry. You didn't bring it in on purpose. You just kind of noticed, hey, wait a minute. That doesn't sound like something I want. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and like me, your first thought is not, God bless you, my friend. I still need to work on that one. But if you're brave enough to look into those darkened corners of your life and honest enough to say, you know what? There's stuff there that I just don't want. Stuff that just should not be there. Here's what I believe. I believe that there are people in this room right now that already know what I'm talking about. And maybe I haven't listed it by name. I named a couple things. I honestly believe that. I was talking to Jesus this past week and really wrestling with the message to bring this morning, and you guys have been on my mind all this week. And I believe with all of my heart, you already know. You already know what's in the corners of your life. You already know what's behind the curtain. You already know what God is saying. You don't need that. I don't want that for you. That is not good for you. That can go, and you'll be the better for it. You don't remember where it came from, but you know it's there, and you know what it is. When those unwanted things in our lives start to accumulate, it's time to take out the trash. Time to take out the trash. And it looks different for everybody, but the Apostle Paul in Colossians 3, verses 5 through 11, and really 5 through 9, I'm going to concentrate a little bit more on. He gives us some ideas about some of the things he's talking about, some of the things he might call trash. Sexual immorality. And that's a big one, huh? Impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed. These are big things. Anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language. Trash is often sin, but it doesn't have to be. The trash that I'm talking about is anything that causes distance between you and God. Anything that drives that wedge, that forces you further away from God's side. It's not good for you. And it's time for it to go. Anything that corrodes your relationship with God and others and yourself. Lying, unforgiveness, pornography, substance abuse, selfishness, arrogance. That secret that you've been hiding. Maybe there's some embarrassment. Maybe there's some shame in admitting that that stuff is there. But shame, embarrassment, that never forces you to a healthier place. Shame and embarrassment always forces you into hiding. It always forces you to bury it a little bit deeper. Hide the problem. Don't let other people see, because I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed to say I'm struggling with this. I'm embarrassed to tell you, to let you know what's behind the curtain in my life. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed to tell you what has accumulated in the corners of my soul. The more you allow problems to hang around, the more dangerous and destructive they can be. Now, who would want that for you? Only the enemy of your soul would want you to hold on to things that are dangerous to you, destructive to you. But God says there's another way. God says there's a freedom that you can scarcely imagine. There is a freedom that you can scarcely imagine, and I promise you that's true. I promise you that's true. God is whispering this morning. God is shuffling his feet. Do you hear it? God's heart is beating. And if you're serious about wanting to listen to the heartbeat of God, to hear his feet as they shuffle, to hear what God is whispering to you, you've got to listen. And to listen well, you've got to get rid of the trash, because the trash separates you from God. And it makes it harder for you to hear his voice, harder for you to listen to his heartbeat. When you discover that there's junk, there's trash lying around in your life, you have a choice to make. Try to ignore it, or just be honest and deal with it. And that choice is yours. But no matter how good you think you are at ignoring the sins and the trash in your life and hiding it, the stuff that's accumulated, eventually it's going to come to the surface. Eventually it's going to be exposed for what it is. Eventually it's going to be a problem, and honestly a pretty big one. Sooner or later it's going to be a problem for you, and maybe for others as well. Because the trash in your life always affects other people. I doubt any of my neighbors drove by my house and thought, hey, they got a Coke machine. That's going to up my property value. Glad that guy moved in. No one would have thought that. Maybe you've walked by a fish counter at a grocery store and think, man, that's a strong smell. You're not behind the counter, you're just walking by, and yet the odor comes to you. Or maybe on a hot sunny day, and I'm longing for those, I don't know about you, but on a hot sunny day you walk by a dumpster and you think, it smells like the Cleveland Browns over there. It's like carrying around an old onion in your backpack. It might not seem like a problem at first, but eventually it's going to be. It's going to stink so much that you can't ignore it anymore. And the people around you, they know it too. They can see the struggle. They can tell something's not right. But God can unload that backpack for you. God can unload that backpack for you. Peter tells us, cast all your cares on him. He already knows. We might as well fess up to God. Cast all your cares on him. Throw your burdens to Jesus. He can carry them. He's got broad shoulders. There's a certain town I've driven through. Some of you know what town it is. I won't mention it by name. But I've driven through this town, and there's this really strong smell in the air. No, that's your words, not mine. My wife Dana, she's over here. Oh, you're awake now? Good morning. She never was asleep. I'm just kidding. On our honeymoon, we've been married 28 years now. 28. And this month. Way to go us, huh? And on our honeymoon, we drove through this town that maybe some of you have heard of, and I noticed, man, it's got a strong smell to this town. I've never been here before. There was a Burger King at that time, and I stopped for lunch to go, and I said, how do you put up with that? And the person behind the counter said, well, you just deal with it. You get used to it. It stinks, but you get used to it. I've had trash in my life that stunk, but I had gotten used to it. Maybe that's true for you too. There's junk, there's trash lying around in your life. And you know it's no good. But you've gotten used to it. It doesn't bother you anymore. You go to that website, and you used to feel really guilty about it. It doesn't really bother you anymore. You share gossip about your coworker or talk smack about your classmate behind their back. You used to feel bad about it, but now, it's not such a big deal. You feel so angry at your parents or your boss or God. And you used to wish you weren't so angry, but now it's how it is for you. You've gotten used to the burden of that trash. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't stink and that the people around you can't smell it. They might not know what it is, but they can tell. My dad had surgery in January, very serious cancer surgery, and he's recovering from that. And some days are better than others. And I saw him yesterday, and I could tell something's not right. Something's not right. He didn't have to tell me I'm having a really bad day. I talked to him later on in the day, and someone said, I hope you feel better. He said, I can't imagine feeling much worse. That's the first that I'd heard he was having a really bad day. I could tell he was having a bad day. And when I'm weighed down by the trash in my life, I can have a bad day, and I don't have to tell you. People around you don't have to tell you. I can see you're struggling. I can see you're carrying a burden. I can see there's a weight on your shoulders that you're dealing with today. God doesn't want you to carry that stuff. The weight of the trash that some of us carry around can leave us feeling weary and worn out all the time. And maybe that's you today. I just feel so tired, so weary, so worn down. But I'm going to keep that junk. I'm going to keep that trash in my backpack. I'm going to carry it around because I'm used to it. And if you're honest with yourself, you're tired of it. You're ready to be free of it. Trash only becomes more and more problematic as it hangs around. True story, a couple years ago I had probably a gallon or half gallon of milk that expired 4 days before its expiration date. And I think, this milk owes me 4 days. So I was going to take it back to the store, but I didn't get to the store that day or the next day or 4 days later. It was about a week later before I got to the store to tell them, hey, this expired long before the expiration date. It stunk 4 days before the expiration date. It was a good solid week or more before I returned it. Can you imagine what that thing would have smelled like? Can you imagine what would have happened if I dropped that on the carpet in my dining room? I'd have had to burn that house down. That'd just be it. I'd be done with that place. At the moment when it was in that container, it wasn't causing a problem, but it's a time bomb. Eventually, it would be a problem. Waiting it out never makes a problem smaller like this. The longer I waited, the more damage it does. And that's why today is the day for you to take out the trash. Today's the day. A writer by the name of McLaren tells a story of a man who got his hand stuck between rollers, caught in the belting of a machine. He says, another minute and he'll be flattened to a shapeless, bloody mass. He catches up on an axe lying by and with his own arm hacks off his own hand at the wrist. It's not easy or pleasant, but it's the only alternative to a horrible death. Sometimes we let trash pile up because it seems easier than dealing with it. But in the end, it's way better to do the work now. It's way better to do the work now. It's to rip the Band-Aid syndrome off, right? Just get it over with. Expose it to the light. Expose it to the healing of God's presence and God's grace, which is available today. You probably own a computer or have access to one, and you know that there is a destination called the recycle bin. You know what the purpose of that is, right? I'm done with this old email, right? This old Word document or notice from my teacher about a due date for a class project. Stuff you got rid of, and then you decided, hey, you know what? I need that after all. I'm going to bring that back. That's what a recycle bin is for. And we have that in our lives too. We get sick of being miserable all the time, so you clean house. You took out the trash, but then you had second thoughts. You bargain with yourself. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe it wasn't such a big deal. I think I can handle it this time. And so you go to the recycle bin of your life and you bring it back. You knew it was trash when you got rid of it. You knew it was worthless. You knew it was dangerous. You knew it was destructive. You knew in your heart of hearts it's drawing a wedge between you and God, between you and others, you and your spouse, you and your kids. It's drawing a wedge between you and your parents, and yet you bring it back. You missed it, and you fell into the same trap again. You went back to that website again. You refused to forgive again. You picked up the phone and made that call again. You allowed yourself to stay angry again. And those things are hurting your relationship with God and with others and with yourself. And as I allow things to hang around in my life, trash always seems to come to the surface. This trash always seems to come to the surface. And if I can't recognize it on the surface level, it's affecting my relationships in ways that I might not even realize. You may struggle with some sins and some temptations and frustrations your whole life. That doesn't mean you don't want to be rid of it. It doesn't mean it has an unbreakable hold on you. We started off this morning singing Great Things, right? That's the name of that song, Great Things? Yeah. It says, Hero of Heaven. You've conquered the grave. You've broken all of these chains. I know that calls Jesus the hero of heaven, and he is the hero of my life because he has broken serious chains in my life. He has helped me to get rid of the trash in my life. When I let it hang around and it resurfaces, that doesn't speak of its hold on me or God's inability to heal me of that. That speaks of the tenacious character of that enemy of your soul that I referred to before. You have an enemy. Do not underestimate him. But don't sell God short. He can break any chain. Yeah. Amen. The Soul Care Bible says this. It takes a conscious daily decision to say no to these sinful temptations and rely on the Holy Spirit's power to overcome them. It's a daily decision. It's never one and done. When I moved into my house, that first week I had 4 cans of garbage. That's the most I could give. They said after that they're going to charge me by the can. So the first couple weeks I had 4 cans. Now I have 1 or 2, but there's always trash. Every week there's trash we get rid of. Every week. It wasn't like I moved into my house, all right, I'm going to throw my garbage out, now I don't need to throw anything out for the next however many months or years that I live there. When I deal with the trash in my life, it's not a one and done. Paul says in verse 5, you got that stuff in your life, and again, I believe you already know what I'm talking about in your own life. Paul says, put that stuff to death in verse 5. Put it to death. Whatever belongs to your earthly nature, not pack it away, not put it under the stairs in case you need it and want to bring it back. Not work really hard to overcome that. Or keep it in the horse trailer till it's convenient for you to deal with. Put them to death. Death is final. There's no coming back from that. Sin brings about the wrath of God, Paul tells us there in verse 6. Very consistent with what you might know Romans 6:3. The wages of sin is death. Sin is repulsive to God, and yet we let it hang around. We let it linger as if it were a toy, a plaything that I can manage. But sin is no more a toy or plaything than a live, fully grown alligator. Sooner or later, both of them will bite you. Listen, you've played with that trash long enough. It's time to put it down. Paul gives a partial list of some of the problems. I read it before: the sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. We might think of these as big sins. And then in verse 8, anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene or filthy language from your lips. And maybe we say, well, those are important, but they're smaller. And yeah, maybe some sins are worse than others, but there are no small sins. Following Jesus means turning your back on all of it. It means putting it to death. It means having no further relationship with that stuff. I'm done with that. And once you get a glimpse, once you get a taste of the freedom that God can offer you, you realize just how sweet that is, and you never, ever, ever want to go back. It means rejecting the personal and the social sins. But know this: there is nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to reduce your value to God. You are His work of art. He sees you, and He knows you, and He loves you, and He wants to deliver you. He wants to heal you. There's nothing you can do to change that. Owning trash doesn't make you trash. It just weighs you down along the way. You can pack a little bit lighter for the journey by taking out the trash, getting rid of it, put it to death. Be done with it now and forever. It's going to be work. It's not going to be easy. Dr. Bill Elliff says, the very sins you are looking to in this world are not solving the problem in your life. Sin is killing you, ruining your life and the lives of others. Sin is killing you, ruining your life and the lives of others. It's time to take out the trash. It's time to be done with it. Take out the trash that's piled up in your life, because it doesn't belong there. The truth is, it never did. It's time to break those chains. And the ones that you've tried so hard to break and just can't seem to, you know who can? The hero of heaven, who can break every chain, who can bring freedom to every soul. It's time to break those chains. It's time to put the old way of life to death. It's time to empty the recycle bin to where you cannot bring those things back and you don't want to. It's time to take out the trash. I don't know your story. I don't know your story. But I know the God who does. And He has a freedom that you can not even imagine. If you've never experienced it, you can't even imagine. And I want today to be a day of freedom for you. Listen, I got nowhere to go. I got nowhere to go. I would love to talk to you. And maybe you're thinking, I don't want to talk to you, man. I don't know you. And that's all right. There are people here that you do know. And if you don't know anybody else here, talk to this guy in the purple shirt. Is that purple? What is that? Lavender? It's like a deep lavender, isn't it? It's pretty. It's nice. There is someone in this room that you can talk to today. Someone who is safe. That's me. That's this guy. Some of your church leaders. You know who they are. Talk to somebody today. You don't have to come forward and kneel down. You don't have to come to the front row and sit. You don't have to talk to me or Pastor Bob or one of the elders of your church. You can. You can. If you need that moment in your life to say, I remember when I did that. I remember when I talked to him back there, and man, that speaker can really put the donuts down after church. I got nowhere to go. I got nowhere to go. I'd be glad to talk to you. You can do it right there in your seat. Right now. Why wait? Why wait? Just bow your head and talk to Jesus. There's no magic formula, no secret words I can give you. And again, you've been on my mind this past week, and I believe and have believed for several days now that you already know what that trash is. You already know what God is calling you to step out of, to step away from, to put to death and never revive. He's calling you into a life of freedom, and he wants to welcome you into it. There's nowhere you can go beyond the call of God's grace and God's care. Listen to his heartbeat. Be still before him. Listen for the shuffling of his feet. Listen for the sweet sound of his voice. He's whispering, it's time to come clean. You have suffered long enough. It's time to stay clean for good. There's a freedom you can know that I promise you will transform your life. Experiencing that freedom begins by taking out the trash. Do business with God today. Father, I'm so grateful this morning